The Galactic Coalition prided itself on enlightenment, precision, and supremacy. Across 1,000 worlds, its soldiers marched in luminous armor, armed with weapons that bent light and matter, believing themselves the pinnacle of warfare. When humanity was finally invited into this grand alliance, it was not out of admiration but practicality. Humans were resourceful, adaptable, and useful in logistics, but in the eyes of the Coalition's towering species, they were a primitive people, descendants of a violent past that clung to crude metals and old ideas of combat. Their weapons were considered archaic curiosities, their tactics quaint. The Coalition believed war was now a science, not an art. The humans, they decided, had nothing to teach. The frozen planet of Carthos, 9 was chosen for a joint training operation, a neutral ground of jagged cliffs and constant storms. Its purpose was to test interspecies coordination in difficult terrain. When the first Coalition ships descended through the flurries, they brought with them firepower capable of scorching continents. Troops disembarked in polished exosuits, armor humming with radiant energy, faces hidden behind visors of gold and silver. Drones swarmed overhead like metal insects, scanning and mapping every contour of the terrain. The valley shone faintly under the light of twin suns, a battlefield so cold even sound seemed to hesitate before moving. Then the humans arrived. 3 of them, stepping from a smaller, frost-coated transport, wrapped head to toe in mottled white and gray. No armor plates, no energy cores, just fabric and discipline. Their weapons were long, slender rifles of matte black steel, without a hint of glowing circuitry. The contrast was almost comical. Laughter rippled through the ranks of the alien soldiers. To them, these humans were relics walking, anachronisms in a world of plasma and photonic warfare. The leader of the human trio, Captain Elias Rains, said nothing in reply. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and even stripped of any need to impress. Captain Rains, Spotter Sergeant Cho, Rifleman Hale, we're here to observe and engage targets, as ordered. His words were professional, his posture unbothered. If he heard the chuckles around him, he gave no sign. Cho, shorter and sharper-eyed, offered a thin smile to no one in particular. Hale merely adjusted the strap of his rifle and looked at the distant ridge as if calculating trajectories already. The Coalition's commanding officer, a tall Indari with skin that shimmered like polished obsidian, approached them with what he thought was diplomacy. "Your presence honors this exercise," he said, though his tone carried the indulgence one might use with children. "We have allocated you observation roles. Your rifles will be tested for data comparison." Rains nodded. Understood. He didn't explain that observation was exactly what they were best at. Briefing followed inside a heated field tent. Coalition soldiers crowded around holographic projections of Carthos, 9, its frozen canyons rendered in luminous blue lines. They discussed vectors, thermal fields, and energy coverage, speaking with the detached confidence of those who assumed dominance. When it came time for the humans to outline their role, Cho stepped forward. "We'll deploy along this ridge," she said, marking a line that skirted the exercise zone's upper perimeter. "We'll cover your advance and track simulated enemy movement. If hostiles break containment, we'll eliminate them before they breach the valley." One of the Illyrian captains, his scales glinting under the holographic light, gave a sound that might have been laughter. "Eliminate them? With what?" "Your antique rifles." Cho smiled politely. "Only if necessary." Outside, the storm thickened. When the exercise began, the Coalition forces advanced in formation, energy weapons glowing blue through the haze. The humans disappeared into the snow. Within minutes, even the drones lost track of them. The aliens muttered about poor sensor calibration, unaware that the humans had simply outpaced technology with skill. The first targets were automated drones armored with reflective plating, designed to mimic enemy fire teams. Plasma bolts struck them in blinding bursts, each hit a testament to the Coalition's power. Yet when the smoke cleared, the drones remained standing, their surfaces scorched but intact. Frustration rippled through the alien ranks. Commands barked. Energy output increased. The results stayed the same. Then came a sound unfamiliar to many in the coalition, a single, sharp crack that seemed to tear the air rather than burn it. One of the armored drones shuddered, then collapsed. A second crack followed. Another drone fell. The aliens looked upward, bewildered, searching for the source. The third shot was met with silence as the final drone crashed into the snow. A small, neat hole punched through its armored heart. "Who fired?" demanded the Andari general. The answer came through the comms, clear and calm. "Captain Rains. Targets neutralized." Awaiting further orders. Engineers rushed to inspect the fallen drones. There was no plasma residue, no melted metal, no trace of exotic energy. Only kinetic destruction, precise and efficient. "Impossible," whispered one. "No energy trail at all." Rains's voice again. "Physics doesn't need batteries." For the first time that day, no one laughed. The coalition soldiers, who moments ago mocked the simplicity of gunpowder, stood quiet. Their doctrines had not prepared them for what they had witnessed. Violence executed with patience, mathematics, and nerve. As the exercise concluded, the coalition command reviewed data logs that defied their understanding. How could a projectile weapon, powered by chemical combustion, outmatch energy-based systems? The numbers refused to lie. In the frozen silence of Carthos, 9, humans had proven something the coalition had forgotten: that elegance and simplicity were not opposites of power. When the transports prepared for departure, the general approached Rains once more. "Your weapons," he began, hesitating, "they are efficient." Rains met his gaze. "They are human." Snow drifted between them, each flake catching faint light from the departing ships. The general inclined his head in a gesture that almost resembled respect. As the humans boarded their transport, Cho glanced out at the alien ranks, still murmuring among themselves. "Think they'll stop laughing?" she asked. Rains fastened his harness and looked at the white horizon. "No," he said quietly, "but they'll start listening." Outside, the wind picked up again, erasing their footprints from the snow. The storm closed over the valley, and somewhere above, the stars shimmered faintly through the clouds, watching a new kind of soldier rise from the cold. The storm came without warning. One moment, the snipers and their coalition counterparts were navigating a narrow ridge, reviewing data from the earlier exercise. The next, an unfamiliar vibration rippled through the air, sharp enough to rattle teeth. Captain Rains felt it before he heard it, an arrhythmic hum that didn't belong to wind or plasma equipment. Sergeant Cho stiffened beside him, instinctively lowering her profile against the snow-coated rock. Hale raised his rifle halfway before stopping, listening. Their restraint contrasted sharply with the coalition soldiers farther down the slope, who looked around with confusion rather than caution. The hum stopped. A pair of drones overhead flickered, jerked, then spiraled downwards like drunk fireflies before smashing into the ice. The aliens gasped. Rains didn't. He recognized a directed EMP pulse when he saw one, though this one had a sharpness to it, tuned, deliberate, malicious. "What just happened?" shouted a Valkan officer, tapping uselessly at his dead wrist display. Rains scanned the horizon. Movement glimmered in the distance, barely visible in the swirling snow. Silhouettes too coordinated to be wildlife, too brazen to be coalition. "We're not alone," he murmured. Hale lowered his visor and nodded once, already calculating sight lines. Cho whispered they jammed the comms too. "Whoever they are, they came prepared." The first plasma bolt screamed across the valley, striking a boulder near the coalition column and sending a spray of molten shards across their flank. The aliens scattered, their disabled shields leaving them suddenly fragile. More blasts followed, erratic and brutal, fired by hands unfamiliar with the weapon's recoil. These attackers weren't professional soldiers. They were something worse. Opportunists who didn't care about precision, only damage. Rains watched the patterns of the bolts, the angles of origin, the speed of retreat and advance. "Mercenary raiders," he said, "using stolen coalition tech." The irony was bitter. The Coalition, so proud of its superior weaponry, now had those same weapons turned against it, and without functioning shields or exo-support, they were effectively blind. Cho crouched beside a panicked Andari lieutenant, fumbling with his unpowered gauntlet. "Stop trying to reboot it," she said sharply. "Energy systems are fried. You need to move." The lieutenant stared at her, bewildered. "How do you fight without tools?" she interrupted. "By thinking." Reins tapped their shoulders. "Time to move." The trio dropped into the snow, disappearing into the ridgeline with practiced ease. While the Coalition soldiers scrambled for cover, the humans slid into a world that felt familiar, the world where chaos favored the patient. The mercenaries advanced, emboldened by the Coalition's fractured formation. Rain spotted a heavy rail cannon crew setting up behind a collapsed ice shelf. If they fired, the Coalition's centerline would disintegrate. Hale steadied his breathing and adjusted his rifle. Cho confirmed wind drift and temperature. One shot cracked through the frozen air. The cannon operator jerked and fell. The weapon toppled, smashing into the snow. Coalition eyes widened. Even without functional scanners, they understood what had happened. The snipers were awake. "Where are they?" whispered a Yularian trooper, searching the ridge with his naked eyes. The answer came as another shot, then a third, each clean and purposeful. Mercenaries retreated behind cover, suddenly cautious. The Coalition troops clung to the safety provided by the invisible humans somewhere above them. Rains crawled forward, snow crusting on his ghillie suit. Cho tracked a pair of mercenaries attempting to flank the valley. Hale monitored the rear, guarding against a counter-sniper. Their teamwork was silent choreography, built from years of trust and necessity. "This is turning into a real fight," Cho said softly. "Then we treat it like one," Rains replied. A mercenary drone lifted clumsily into the air, struggling to maintain altitude after the EMP. Hale exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger, and sent it crashing back down. The Coalition soldiers below erupted into raucous cheers, a sound tinged with or rather than arrogance. A young Valkan private stared up at the ridge. "Humans," he breathed, as though saying the word for the first time. "They're ghosts." Rains caught glimpses of the mercenaries regrouping near a mountain pass. Their leader, a broad figure wearing mismatched armor plates, was signaling retreat. But retreat didn't mean surrender. They were heading toward higher elevation, where the terrain would favor ambushes and energy weapons would be safer to use without ricochets. "We can't let them get up there," Cho warned. "They know this tech better than they look." "Coalition can't pursue," Hale added. "Not without shields." Rain studied the rocky path winding upward like a frozen scar. They needed to cut off the mercenaries before they reached the high ledge. "We go," he said. Cho looked at him. "Just us. Just us." The decision wasn't reckless. It was necessary. The Coalition relied on technology to define their role in battle. Humanity relied on something more primal, adaptability. Where machines failed, instinct endured. They moved quickly but silently, weaving through crevices and icy outcroppings. The wind thickened, muffling distant footfalls. The mercenaries grew clearer. 6, maybe 7, pushing toward the high pass. One stumbled. Another argued. Their formation was sloppy, their desperation palpable. A shot rang out, then another. The mercenaries realized too late that they had walked into the crosshairs of predators who didn't need glowing armor to dominate a battlefield. Within minutes, the pass was cleared. The last mercenary threw down his weapon and ran, slipping on the ice before disappearing between boulders. Rains didn't fire. He had no need. Fear would travel faster than any bullet. The wind settled. The valley fell quiet again. Rain surveyed the battlefield, the Coalition forces gathering strength below. "We hold here," he said. "They'll expect us to chase." Cho nodded. Hale checked his rifle one more time. The mercenaries had underestimated them. The Coalition had doubted them. But on this frozen world, stripped of technology and pretense, humanity had shown what it truly was, a species that survived by refusing to surrender. And this was only the beginning. The mercenaries did not stay defeated for long. From their perch on the ridge, Rains and his team watched the survivors regroup farther down the ravine, gathering around a hulking bipedal walker that stomped through the snow with an uneven, grinding gait. The machine was crude compared to Coalition standards, its plating scavenged from different models, its joints patched with exposed wiring. It carried power, raw, dangerous power. The mercenaries clustered behind it like vultures behind a wounded beast, desperate enough to let a half-functional war machine lead their next assault. Choke adjusted her scope, studying the walker's movements. "If that thing gets into the valley," she said, "the Coalition won't have anything left to hide behind." Hale grunted in agreement. He rarely wasted words when the terrain already spoke volumes. The ravine, narrow and steep, funneled sound upward. Every mechanical creak echoed like thunder, masking the layered shuffle of mercenary boots. Rains steadied his breathing, letting the cold sharpen his focus. The Coalition forces below were reorganizing, but they remained exposed. If the walker reached them, the mercenaries would punch straight through their weakened lines. He weighed his options with discipline honed from years of quiet warfare. Range, angles, wind, visibility, enemy morale. None favored the Coalition. That left only one conclusion. "We end it here," he said. Cho cracked a small smile. "Thought you'd say that." The walker angled toward a natural ramp carved by ancient ice flows. Snow crumbled under its heavy steps. The mercenaries marched behind it, emboldened by the sudden advantage. Their leader, a scarred brute wrapped in mismatched armor and arrogance, barked orders while cradling a plasma cannon in his arms. Rains sighted him, then shifted his aim. Not yet. The leader was irrelevant until the machine died. The machine, however, was a threat even patience couldn't tolerate. Heat exhaust poured on the right. Cho murmured, tracking the flicker of orange through a lens. "If we breach it, feedback might fry the core." "Risky," Hale muttered. "Better than letting it crush the Coalition line." They repositioned silently, crawling along the ridge until they found a narrow alcove sheltered from the wind. Snow flurried around them like drifting ash, but the cold did nothing to dull their steadiness. Rains settled his rifle against a natural stone rest, exhaled, and centered the reticle over the walker's weak point. The machine paused, shifting its bulk to clear a boulder. It was enough. His shot lashed through the frozen air, disappearing into the machine's flank. A metallic scream tore through the ravine as sparks erupted from the exhaust, and the walker lurched violently. Its left leg buckled, driving it sideways into the rock wall with earth-shaking force. The mercenaries shouted in frantic confusion. Cho fired next, her round shattering the joint of the walker's stabilizer. Hale's bullet followed, ricocheting into an exposed conduit that burst into a shower of molten fragments. The walker collapsed fully, its corrupted systems whining in protest before dying with a final mechanical groan. A stunned hush swept through the valley. Even the wind seemed surprised. The mercenary leader's roar broke it. He lifted his plasma cannon and fired blindly toward the ridge. The blast seared the cliffside several meters away, vaporizing snow into steam. Another shot followed, then a third, each increasingly desperate. "Reckless," Hale muttered. "Predictable," Cho corrected. Rains observed the furious figure, noting the overcharged glow of the cannon's core. The leader was pushing it toward meltdown without understanding its limitations. Rains waited for the inevitable lapse. Rage always created openings. When the leader stepped out from behind cover to get a clearer angle, Rains fired. The round struck the cannon's emitter, cracking it like fragile glass. A surge of unstable energy burst outward, sending the leader crashing to the ground as the cannon sputtered, sparked, and tumbled from his hands. He tried to rise, but Hale's next shot shattered the armor plate on his knee, dropping him back into the snow. The battle was over. The remaining mercenaries scattered in every direction, abandoning weapons, gear, and any illusion of courage. Some fled into the lower ravines, others up the far slopes, but none dared remain within range of the unseen sharpshooters. The Coalition soldiers, watching from the valley floor, finally understood what had happened. The snipers stood, their ghillie suits blending with the frost until they seemed to materialize from the landscape itself. Rains tapped his comm again, though he didn't expect a response. Surprisingly, a faint crackle answered. The EMP field was fading. The Andari general's voice emerged, distorted but clear enough. Team, human team, report. Rain spoke evenly. Threat neutralized. Valley is secure. Silence followed, heavy with something deeper than simple acknowledgement. Respect, long overdue, finally crossed the divide. When the general replied, his tone held no trace of earlier condescension. Your actions saved us. We owe you more than thanks. Cho glanced at Rains, eyebrows raised. Historic moment, she whispered. Rains didn't comment. History wasn't their concern. Survival was. But it was impossible to ignore the way coalition soldiers now looked up at them as they descended the ridge, no longer with amusement or doubt, but with admiration shaped by necessity. The general approached them personally, his armor scarred from earlier blasts. We misjudged you, he said. Your methods, your discipline, they reveal strengths our doctrines overlooked. Hale shrugged faintly. Different tools. Same goal. Different mindset. The general corrected gently. One we must learn from. Rains met his gaze. Then start by recognizing that every battlefield has rules. You just forgot that physics writes most of them. The general nodded, accepting the truth with humility rare among his kind. The coalition troops began salvaging equipment, assisted by Cho's quick assessments and Hale's practical efficiency. Cooperation, not hierarchy, shaped their movements. As the sky darkened and the wind shifted, Rains looked toward the mountains where the mercenaries had fled. They would return. Desperation always did. But next time, the coalition would be ready, and not because of new technology, but because they had learned to trust those who mastered simplicity over spectacle. For now, the valley was quiet, the crisis ended. But the story of what happened on Carthos 9 was only beginning to ripple outward, destined to reshape the coalition's understanding of war, of humanity, and of the value hidden beneath humble weapons wielded by patient hands.